So we're going to talk about finding the values of the discriminant and the number of real solutions. So let's first talk about what is a discriminant. Okay, well, in our quadratic formula, which is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. That's your quadratic formula. The discriminant is just the part that's inside the square root, which we call a radical. So the discriminant is the value under the square root symbol in the quadratic formula. And keep in mind, like the a, the b, and the c that's in the quadratic formula is the numbers on the problem. Like there's an invisible one here. This is a. A is 1, b is positive 4, c is positive 3. In this problem, a is 1, b is negative 2, c is negative 7. And over here, a is 2, b is 6, c is 12. Okay, so that's where those a, b, and c come from. And this is the quadratic formula. It's how to solve for the possible values of x. And the plus or minus are, one time you do it with the plus and come up with an answer. The next time you do it with a minus and you come up with an answer. Now, one of the key things you have to be careful about with this is whatever you put in for b in here, make sure you put it in parentheses, because if it's a negative number, it'll kind of get messed up if you don't. And then inside of here, you want to also follow the order of operations so that you're doing things in the right order. Okay, so that's what the discriminant is. It says, whatever the value is under that root symbol. Now, those values can be three different possibilities. You could have a positive answer inside of there, like the square root of 42. Or you could have you could have 0 in there, so square root of 0. Or you could have the square root of negative 5, okay? And you can't really find the square root of negative numbers. So these are the three situations: positive, negative, and 0. And so that's how you tell how many answers you'll have. There are two solutions to the problem that both work for x when inside of the root symbol you have a positive number. There's one solution when the inside of the radical is 0. And then there's no solutions, no real solutions, when the inside is a negative number. They do have something called, they're pretend, we call them imaginary. And the reason they're called imaginary answers, I'm sure you'll get into that soon, because if you don't have a real answer to something, if there's no answer that could possibly come up in the math universe of what works in math, then if you're going to have an answer to it, you're going to have to make it up in your imagination. It's going to have to be something that doesn't exist. Like we can't find the square root of negative 4, because roots mean that you have exactly the same number times each other to make that. Well, 2 times 2 doesn't make a negative 4, and negative 2 times negative 2 does not make a negative 4. They both make a positive 4. You can't square something and end up with a negative. And so this is impossible right here. If we're saying what got squared that made this, well, nothing did. It's not possible. And if you were to come up with an answer, it would have to be from your imagination. You'd have to call it like pickles or grass or something. It would be something really weird, because it can't be a number. There's no such answer to this. And actually, you'll see in future sections that we call this I. The answer to this involves an I, an imaginary number. But we're going to get more into how to solve that later using that idea. So back to this. If you have two solutions when the inside of the radical is positive, you have one solution when it's a 0, and you have no solutions when it's a negative number. So let's look at this problem here. We're going to use our quadratic formula that says the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c over 2a. And really the only part we need right now is just the radical part. So we're just going to fill that in. The radical of the square root of b squared, which is 4 squared, minus 4 times a, which was a 1, times c, which is a 3. And so we need to solve this in here. Remember, follow the order of operations. So if you have parentheses, do that first. If you have exponents, do that next. If you have any multiplication or division, do that next. And then if you have any addition or subtraction, do that. So inside of here, we don't have anything really in parentheses to do. There's just a 4 there, nothing to do. So we're done with that. Exponents, here we have 4 squared. So we'll do just that part so you can see it worked out. 4 squared is 16. And then now we have some multiplication and division. We have multiplication here. Negative 4 times positive 1 times positive 3. So now we have the square root of 16 minus 12. So lastly, we can do any addition or subtraction. So we have the square root of 4. Okay, now this is a positive 4, right? I know we can solve it, but remember to find out what the discriminant is. If what's inside the radical is positive, then there are 2 answers, 2 real answers actually to this, because it would say plus or minus the square root of 4, which means plus or minus 2 on that part only of the quadratic equation. So we know that there are 2 real solutions. Okay. So the discriminant is 4, the value under the radical. The discriminant is 4, and there are 2 real answers. Let's look at this next one. Again, we're just going to worry about this radical part. That's going to say b, which is, and we're going to be careful about these parentheses, negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 7. Be careful about the signs. Okay, we're going to work on this inside the radical. We have exponent. If you don't put the parentheses around it and you put this in your calculator, it's going to give you the wrong answer, okay? You want to put that in your calculator with the parentheses. It's actually positive 4, because negative 2 times negative 2. If you don't use the parentheses around it, the calculator will actually tell you negative 4. So please be careful. Okay, and then we have negative 4 times positive 1 times negative 7. So that gives us a positive 28. And then when you put that together, we have the square root of 32. So the discriminant is 32. We have 2 real answers because the internal part of this is positive. Okay. So here we have b squared, which is 6, minus 4 times 2 times 12. So that's going to give us 36 minus 96, I believe that is. 24 times 4. Okay. So now 36 minus 96 is negative 60. All right, so our discriminant is negative 60, and we have, it's a negative number in here, so we have 0 real solutions.